Did you know Joe has another new podcast? Don't miss The Joe Davis Show, premiering on April 22nd. It's Joe, straight from the heart, and you don't want to miss it. For now, here's episode 15 of Sports Cards and a Cup of Joe.
Welcome to Sports Cards and a Cup of Joe, episode 15, The Decision. This is your host, Joe Davis, and I'm delighted to be with you today. This episode is sponsored by your friends at GotBaseballCards.com. So many of you might recall, those sports enthusiasts, especially those who love basketball, when I say The Decision, you will probably remember what I'm talking about. It was a special ESPN episode where LeBron James was going to announce which team he went to when he first left the Cavaliers. And it was a long show. They did it at a boys' club, I believe, in Cleveland, and the viewership, something like the viewership proceeds were going to go to benefit boys' clubs. And so LeBron tried to do something positive with it, but it did not go well for him. But when he announced he was going to the Miami Heat, and went on to go to 4 finals there, and they won 2 back-to-back championships in his second and third year there. But the decision I'm talking about was my decision to open my first card store. I recently had one of our great customers, Al Scooter Vertino, was in my store saying how he loved hearing about these old stories of things in the hobby. So here you go. I still remember 1991. My graduation was approaching, and not only was my graduation from college approaching, but my wedding date was approaching in August of that year. But this was May of 1991. And I was about to graduate with my shiny new degree from Berry College, and I was going to be a new graduate with a business degree and economics minor, and I was going to pursue some type of job. I was already interviewing. I had done multiple interviews on campus with recruiters, and I'd kind of boiled it down to the finish line sporting goods. And I was going to start as an assistant manager, and knowing I was getting married in a few months, I knew I needed some income because selling sports cards on the side was fun, and that was my passion, but I didn't see how in the world I was ever going to make enough doing that at the time to provide enough income for my family. But then a providential opportunity happened. I was just a few weeks before graduation, and my buddy Jeff Porter, who I did trade shows with, he had graduated the year before me. I got a call from him one night, and he said, "Hey, Roger's closing the store." Roger was Roger Pavey, friend of mine, and Roger had a sports card store in Avondale Estates, Georgia, 500-foot store, and Jeff worked for him there. And he said, "Hey, Roger is going to close the store because they had a break-in, and a number of items had been stolen, and they're like, he left a really bad taste in his mouth. He's like, I don't want to do retail. I'll just sell through mail order," because there was no internet yet. So Jeff called me and said, "Hey, we can take over the store, and we can buy the showcases really affordably, and we can buy a lot of the existing inventory affordably, and we can just take over the month-to-month rent. What do you think?" And we've only got to sign a 6-month lease. So I was stunned and excited and nervous and worried and just so many emotions. And I still remember calling my parents. First, I told my future bride, Jane, and my wife for the last 34 years, because she was also at college with me. And I am sure she was as nervous as I was, maybe more so. But I remember discussing it with her and talking to my parents about it. And my father, who actually ran a decorating business at that time that I had worked at for 9 years, his dream was for me to come and take over, or not necessarily take over, but come and have a bigger leadership role within that business. He was planning to retire in a few years, and was wanting me to take on more and more responsibility there, because I'd been there for 9 years part time, and I'm sure he hoped that one day I would take his place and become a partner in the business and so forth, which I had no desire to do. I wanted to carve my own path, and but I spoke with him, and he was very opposed to the idea, because I remember him saying, "Son," my father was very old school. He was born in 1933. He said, "Son, you've got to be the breadwinner," was his term. And his point was, you're about to get married. You can't do something, illogical. You've got to do, they had just helped pay for my college education, and I wanted to go sell baseball cards. I'm sure my dad was thinking, "What are you thinking, son? You've got to get a real job. This is a pipe dream," was his thought. And my mom said, "Well, son, you've only got to sign a 6-month lease. This is what you want to do with your life. So you don't have kids yet. You don't have a lot of expenses yet. It's a short lease. If this is what you want to do, you need to pray about it and have a peace about it. And if this is what you want to pursue, then you should just go for it." I was always a mama's boy, so guess who I listened to? And so I decided I would go into partnership with my old buddy, Jeff, and we were going to open this store. Well, we weren't going to open. We were going to continue this store that had been open for a few months, but we were going to rebrand it with our name. At the time, it was called the Sports Section, so we renamed it J&J's Sports Section. And honestly, if you want to know why we didn't come up with like a brand new name at the time, there was a big metal sign hanging at the road that said the Sports Section. So it was a whole lot cheaper to pay someone to repaint a small portion of that sign than to buy a new sign. True story. So we had a painter come in and change it to J&J's Sports Section instead of the Sports Section. Our lease for 6 months was, if I recall, $450 a month. And utilities were included, which was wonderful. And we had no clue what we were doing. Both Jeff and I had a business degree, and we had done shows together for a couple of years, but we didn't understand about sales tax. We didn't understand about, we did figure out to get a business license. We didn't understand much about marketing. It was just, we were truly flying by the seat of our pants. I think combined, now we both had some cards, not much, not enough to fill up all the showcases. Like, we put out some cheap cards, put it that way. We were, I think we had, with all of our money combined, and we started our joint checking account for the business, I think we had just over $1,000. And we signed up for direct accounts. I remember Tops was the harder one of the two. We were able to get direct accounts with Upper Deck and Fleer and Donruss, and then Tops took us it took till like 1992 to get our Tops account. We were able to get in with the others. I mean, again, remember Upper Deck had just launched as a company in 1989, but I remember we were able to get 1991 Upper Deck product direct, and it was a big money maker because if I remember, and you'll laugh when I explain this, I remember I think our direct cost was around, it was either like $18 or $20 a box, and we sold it for $1 a pack, or 33, if I remember, it was $33 a box was our retail price. So, we were like, man, we're making $13 a box here. And again, two of us trying to make a living. And we were like, yeah, man, we sold 3 boxes today of that Upper Deck. That's $39. I mean, that's $19.50 a piece profit there. Before you pay rent, before you, etc. I remember one of our earliest days, I didn't have a single customer come in until 5:30. We were open from 10 to 6. I had a customer come in at 5:30. I still remember his total purchase was $2.12. He bought some 88 Donruss Commons for $2, and then with tax it was $2.12. That was my gross sales. That was our company's gross sales for two of us for an entire day. And my wife, Jane, put up with this because I had a dream. We, again, had no clue what we were doing. We learned every lesson from the ground up. We were like, hey, maybe let's run an ad in a paper. Hey, I still remember our first ad said baseball cards and so much more. Because you got to remember, baseball cards were still the core because football, basketball, hockey, they had just started trending nationally for the first time in like 1989. Up until 1989, there was hardly any demand for any other sports. So baseball cards was still our main focus. And that was our first ads, baseball cards and so much more. And I remember being told by an Atlanta area dealer, man, I considered a friend. He told me, Joe, you will never succeed. You will never succeed in that location. It's just not going to work. And I went on for the next several years, and I proved him exactly right. You see, after 4 years, I bought Jeff out because I said, succeed or fail, I'm going to have to just pour everything I have into this. And if it's a failure, then it's my failure. If it's a success, it's my success. And I look back now on those early years, and Ron Lee, who is still with our company today, was our first long-term part-time employee back then, who stuck around for a few years. And so it was pretty much Ron and I, and trying to build that customer base, build by one relationship at a time. And then after 7 years, I relocated the company and to our next location, which was in Snellville, Georgia. It was much closer to home. And again, I basically started from scratch because new location, new city, new customer base. And it was really like starting over again. I had not really figured it all out by then. Yet 1998 was a transformative year because we got on eBay and we got hooked up with PSA for grading. We became a direct dealer for PSA and started offering grading services. But when I go back to those early formative years, I can tell you it was incredibly tough. So many years I was on the verge of throwing in the towel because I was just like, there's just not enough sales coming in. There's not enough customers coming in. There's not enough profit coming in. And it was incredibly tough. And as I often tell people, it's only through prayer and stubbornness that the business stayed open those first few years. Because I would pray to God with Jane and I would say, Lord, am I supposed to just hang it up? Because this dream of mine was basically becoming a nightmare because we struggled so much to pay our bills and we struggled to gain traction because we were not in a good location. We were in the location we were in Avondale because we took over an existing business. And Roger had been in that location because it was convenient for him because he lived right down the street. It was not convenient for me. It was a 45-minute drive most days, sometimes an hour. And finally, 7 years later, it was like, I could just relocate closer to home. Took me a while to realize that. And now I'm blessed to be a few minutes from my house. Different home than I was in then, different building than I was in then when we relocated. But I can tell you it was very hard. The dollars were not flowing into our industry like they are now. It was not, our industry was not trending back then. Yeah, there were, Shaq came along in 1992 and there was a lot of demand for his cards. But again, we're talking stuff that was $1 a pack, $2 a pack. You know, yeah, we would make $15 on a box or $20 on a box or whatever that number was. But you had to move a lot of product just to pay your bills, to have anything left to take home. And many years for me were very minimal income. I literally had years in my first few years of business where my income was net negative. And you may ask, how in the world can you have net negative income running a sports card store? Well, when you put more on a credit card in the calendar year than you actually pay yourself that year, that's a net negative year. And when I look back at my Social Security statements, I go, oh yeah, that's how bad those years were. And so, but this is not supposed to be a downer episode, but when I look back on the decision, I don't regret it. Because even though those early years and many years since then were really tough, I have had the pleasure of buying and selling sports cards, which I passionately love, and daily interacting with collectors and helping them with their collections. And I passionately love to see the excitement on their faces when they pull a great card or they complete a set or they get a good grade on something they bring in. That has not changed over the decades now in the industry. So if you're out there and you're a passionate collector and you're thinking, man, I might want to open a card store, I'm not going to deter you but I'll try to give you sound advice. And I had a gentleman just come in our store last week, and he was like, Joe, can I please have lunch with you? Because I want to open a card store in another state. And I was like, yep, let's do it. Let's do it. And I have a lunch coming up with him. And I can't wait to hear all those questions, because there is far more opportunity now than ever before. But there are also plenty of challenges. There's also way more competition. And you never really have a space to yourself, because no matter what location you choose, there's competition as soon as anyone turns on their computer. So you may not have competition in your town, but anyone in your town who owns a computer, well, you've got competition. And so if you're considering making a decision like that, like I made now 34 years ago, I'm happy to try to help give you some guidance, some thought out guidance. So you're welcome to send emails to heyjoedavis@gmail.com, heyjoedavis@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to answer your emails about that. So hopefully this has been enlightening to some of you who wondered about, how did Joe get into the hobby? How did he start his first store? Because I've had several. We've been blessed to grow over the years, and now we have far more team members, and I'm blessed to work with each one of them. But there you go. That's kind of our origin story of our first foray into opening our first card store back in May of 1991. Now, I did misspeak earlier, because my first conversations about the store were in April of 1991, but I remember our official opening day was May 6th of 1991. So anyway, I hope this has been educational for some of you. It's been cool sharing and reliving some of those memories when I look at what we do now in the industry and the opportunities we have. And I am so thankful to God when I look back on those very humble, very challenging early days. And I'm so thankful for where we are now, and thankful that we get to make a difference in this industry that I still love so much. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Hope you've got something out of it. And remember, as I close, Jesus loves you, and I think you're awesome too. And thanks so much for tuning in. Hope everyone has a fantastic day.